Welcome to the Primal Show with Gary Collins over there in that nice paleo shirt. Oh, wait, we're both wearing paleo shirts today. Myself, Heath Squier. Today's guest is Tony Federico. He is a co-host of the... actually, you know what, Tony? Just tell us all the great things you do. I know you're an author.
It's a long list.
Yes, you have quite a... I don't know, things you do.
I would be happy to talk about myself. That's welcome in any situation. I'm the host of Paleo Magazine Radio, which is the official podcast of Paleo Magazine. I'm a writer for them. Recently released a cookbook, Paleo Grilling, through Fairwinds Press this past summer. So that's been exciting. And I'm a full-time personal trainer. See clients all day, every day, and go home and write and blog and podcast and do my best to be healthy, trying to tell people about health all day, because it actually is a little bit of a conflict of interest sitting in front of a computer writing about health, and so you got to balance it out.
Isn't it tough though? Because I mean, you end up in front of a computer a lot.
I know,
and it's really balance.
I feel a little torn, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't walk on a treadmill and work on my computer because that's just stupid. But
come on, Gary, the evidence is out. That's great.
Well, yeah, there are certain people who do it, but
I might. I think I'm going to go to one of those stand kind of convertible ones. Right now, I have one of those kind of kneeling chairs, so I'm sort of in like a I don't know, almost like a yoga pose right now. So that's all right, but I'd like to be standing up if I could. I'll take that. Yeah. Walking though, I might. I don't know. I don't know if I'm that coordinated.
That's why I don't think I could accomplish those two things at one time, trying to work on my computer and walk at the same time.
Exactly.
Tripping on the treadmill and knocking my teeth out on the handmill or something.
Way too many typos. You have to go back, edit everything.
Yeah.
So tell us, Tony, how old are you?
31.
And how long have you been training clients for?
I got my personal training certification when I was 17, my first certification when I was 17. Awesome. But I began working in the fitness industry in earnest during college, where I studied exercise and sports science at the University of Florida. And I did a practicum at a local gym, and they didn't really realize what I was asking. I asked them, hey, do you accept practicum applications? And like, I guess come in at this time of day. And I walk in, and it's a group interview for a frontline kind of fitness center position. So I ended up getting a job.
Oh, awesome.
And didn't expect that, but it ended up working out pretty well because I ended up graduating in exercise science. I already was working at the gym and just kind of kept rolling with it. Ultimately got into nutrition coaching and personal training there. And this is, going on almost 10 years now. So it's been a long time, and I kind of just feel like it's my thing now. It's just it's part of who I am.
And how did you find paleo? How long ago was it?
It was in 2010. A personal training client came up to me and was basically like, hey man, I got this buddy who's into this crazy CrossFit stuff. Do you know anything about paleo? He just goes on and on about it and thinks it's amazing. And I said, no, I don't, but I'd be willing to give it a shot. My intention was, hey, I'm going to support my client. Cleaning up his eating. I could always use a little cleaner eating, and picked up Lauren Cordain's book, The Paleo Diet. Began reading it within a couple pages. I was like, oh, this is it. This is the thing that makes sense, finally. And all those pieces, all those kind of disparate bodies of knowledge and information really came together in a cohesive way, in a way that made sense. And I was pretty sold, man. And 30 days went by, 90 days went by, and that was 4 years ago. So I'm pretty all in.
And do you see much resistance, like kind of offering paleo as a way of eating to your clients that you see?
I haven't actually had too much trouble because I think that my approach is pretty low pressure. I think, if I went about, first day somebody comes in for an assessment and we're like, all right, you're needing to work on your squat technique and we need to get your, your abdominal muscles a little bit stronger and this and that. And by the way, you got to go 100% paleo. That means, stop eating bread, dairy, legumes, industrial seed oils. And they're like, what are you talking about? I kind of take a slow and steady approach where I start working with people usually on their movement first, just kind of getting them moving, getting them reconnected with their bodies. And then as kind of the weeks go by, inevitably their results from just exercise alone tend to peter out a little bit. And that's the time for the conversation about, all right, well, what's your diet like? What's your sleep like? What's your stress level like? And from there, we can really just determine, hey, all right, man, well, maybe we need to cut out this, or maybe we could try eating more of this, and slow and steady. And within a period of time, they're going paleo, and they're all in on it too. And I have some ladies right now who kind of wheedled away at them for a couple of years, and finally that switch was flipped, and they're losing weight, feeling great, have energy, they're popping up in the morning and going, and it's just cool to see people own it, and I think that that's what I try to do, is give people enough knowledge, enough information to make that decision for themselves, and just say, hey, look, this is the science behind it, this is why it makes sense, take it or leave it, and most of the time they do.
Yeah, have you seen, like, you're talking about, basically like the 80-20 or maybe even like a 60-40 or whatever you want to call it in terms of how strict paleo you are. Do you find that in terms of the last like 5 to 20 pounds are the hardest to lose? I mean, unless you really hone it down to where you're doing like a 95-5 or going all the way paleo, you're not going to lose that last 5 to 20 pounds. And Gary and I have seen a lot of people that are preaching weight loss that haven't lost that 5 to 20 pounds, that they're writing about weight loss, but they haven't lost that last bit of weight. And I think it's so hypocritical, because first off, it's so hard to reach your goal. My goal was like 6% body fat. I wanted a six-pack. I wanted to go all the way. I wanted to look like the guy in the magazine.
Yeah.
And, as a kid growing up, it's like, what does it look like that? Right?
Yeah.
And not only that, how do you do it without cheating? How do you do it without, taking something synthetic? Can you really look like that? And unless you've done it yourself and you've done the research in terms of what supplements do I take, how do you tweak your diet, I find it so hypocritical that a lot of people out there that are preaching weight loss and they haven't done it themselves. And you look at a lot of people in the paleo industry and it's like, why are you teaching weight loss and you're not at an ideal weight yourself? I find it difficult and frustrating. You're obviously very lean. I've seen pictures of you and stuff like that. You've had great success. I think at 31, you've probably seen a lot of stuff happening in your own body.
Yeah,
in terms
unfortunately.
And
I had a gray hair a couple weeks ago. It freaked me out.
Oh, don't worry. There's many more coming.
Oh, no, it was not just one.
I'm 38, so I've seen definitely a lot of changes happen, and thank God I've been paleo since like 2011, because I think it's helped me through that change. But can you attest to the fact that the last 5 to 20 pounds are the hardest, and that's really when you have to go hardcore paleo and really start watching the macros to the point where you reach your goal, and then you can back off and adjust your diet once again? Because sometimes, like, I don't know about you, but like to reach the goal, you have to really restrict certain things like carbs. You start paying attention to calories. Once you reach your goal, then you can start adding some carbs back in. Do you have any sort of philosophy for helping your clients hit the goal?
I mean, with diet, as in everything, there's certainly a law of diminishing returns, and you see that with exercise. So you take someone who's sedentary and they start walking, they get significantly healthier. They start losing some weight. You have them lift weights a couple times a week, and then they get significantly stronger. To go from kind of a normal sort of healthy, functional level of fitness to world-class athlete, however, now you have to really dial it in. Now you have to create much more complicated programs that are much more tailored to the individual, and that require a lot more sacrifice in terms of other aspects of your life. For example, you won't be able to sit around and watch TV for a couple hours a day if you're having to dedicate yourself that much more to training. So I think there's always going to be a compromise. If you really are dedicated to a specific goal, let's just say 6% body fat, that maybe your body isn't naturally lean, and I think that's certainly something that plays into it.
Mine was. I had a predisposition of being overweight. Yeah. All my weight was carried in the stomach, so I knew if I got that six-pack, I had defeated my predisposition of gaining weight there. So
exactly. And I mean, if that's in those types of situations where your body isn't just going to do that on its own, it really takes a lot of dedication. And I mean, I've gotten my body fat down at various points. I get the motivation bug and get it down to the single digits, and it's tough, man. I mean, you really got to sacrifice. You can't be drinking alcohol. You can't be cheating. You got to be all in. And I think it's worth going there just for that personal satisfaction and knowing that you can do that. And for me personally, I don't want to live there. I tend to get a little bit too gaunt, I think, when my body fat levels are a little bit too low. And you know what? If my body's happier at 10 to 13%, hovering kind of around there, I'm gonna maintain that easily, and I'm gonna be able to eat as much as I want of paleo foods, and I don't really have to stress too much about it. And for me, that works. But in terms of diet and in terms of the necessity to be strict, if you really want to reach a tough goal, yeah, 100% you got to be strict. And I can see that with people's food logs. I still have clients do food logs, and I think that that's a great tool for them, even when they're on paleo. Yeah. I don't necessarily say, count all your calories and macros and everything like that in all cases, but write down everything they eat, and you can see the people that are stricter, quote unquote, get more results. And that's just how it is, man. If you want it, you gotta do it.
And actually, the stricter you get, the less you have to work out to reach your goal. It's kind of crazy. A lot of people are working out harder to eat worse. It's
kind of spinning their wheels.
Yeah, it's so easy. And actually, once you learn all the wonderful things we can eat, you're really not that limited. And I
think that you end up being less limited, because if you think about the standard American diet composed primarily of corn, wheat, and soy byproducts, that's not a lot of diversity, and that's not a lot of. I mean, that doesn't seem like an unlimited diet. That seems like a restricted diet to me, where everything you eat is basically the same things, flavored with a different chemical and maybe colored with a different something.
Yeah, but the key ingredient is sugar.
Sugar, crappy oils.
That sugar heroin rush. So there's a whole lot of different dynamic behind it, but I agree with you. And when it comes to reaching your goals, it's interesting, because we've talked about this personally. Everyone's different, so there's different ratios, There's different macros, and when you've been doing it a long time, I've been exercise for almost 4 decades now. I started from the time I was a little kid and been training people since my 20s, so I've kind of got that wired, but I forget. I get caught in that. I forget that this stuff's second nature to me.
Right, exactly.
Explain it to someone and then realizing, okay, what works for me is not necessarily going to work for you. Balancing it, because it's always a moving target too, because sometimes if your diet's not quite as strict, you can compensate. And people are pretty amazed when they go, oh, I just went to a workshop for 3 days, and it wasn't a paleo workshop. So I was a presenter, but what I ate was not what I usually consume. So when I got back, I had to adjust and get back on track. And what I do is I just added 10 minutes of cardio each day. That's it. And everyone's that's all. I went, no, I just went back to my normal diet, and I add 10 minutes of cardio. Well, that ends up over a week being over an hour of cardio. Does it burn a ton of extra calories? Maybe 200-300 extra calories. Not a lot, but that's all I need to get into my deficit zone, because I'm eating pretty clean.
Yeah.
But with that, it all changes. The whole philosophy of you got to burn 3,500 calories to lose a pound. Yes and no. It's a little more complicated than that. Our body,
there's
a
lot more complicated than that
going on, and for me, just to add those difference in calories, but get the same result. But my weight gain isn't necessarily it's not a pound of fat.
Yeah, I think that a
lot of inflammation kicking in from the foods. There's a lot of other stuff going on. So
I think that what you said about it being a moving target is so huge, and that throws so many people off. Yeah. They're like, well, I was 19 and I did this and this, and I just looked great. And I was 25 and I did this and this, and it was awesome. And now I'm 45. What's going on? It's like, you can't do the same thing. What is the definition of insanity? Is the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And unfortunately, you see that day in and day out in the fitness world and in the diet world, where people think they can do what they did when they're in their 20s or 30s. If they're in their 40s or 50s, it's a whole different game. Hormonally, your body's just so different. And what you're willing to do mentally, psychologically, what you have time to do, it all changes. So I think that's a huge point. I think it's an under-discussed thing in the fitness world that even for the same person, the same thing's not going to work the same way across their lifespan.
Well, and you being a personal trainer, this is a good topic, because me and you train, and every time I go in the gym, it's just a fascination. I just watch the trainers, and it's pretty hilarious to watch what goes on.
Yeah.
Everyone puts
unfortunately
the exact same template. So I'm sitting there this morning, and they don't know who I am, because I don't say what I do. I kind of sneak in the gym and do my thing and get the heck out of there. But I watch, and this guy was putting a girl that was probably about 60, 70 pounds overweight. You could tell she had not worked out either in a long time or ever. And the first thing he does is he starts her into plyometrics and jumping.
Terrible idea.
Like, yeah, I'm all,
wow.
doing? And the thing is that I saw him doing it with another client the other day who was more fit, who was a male, but he put him through the exact same cookie cutter. And I think that's what, on the nutrition side, people get confused too, because they think of paleo as this static, very strict, which it is to a point, but you want that strictness in the diet, which is different from exercise. They're two different animals, but you still have to have flexibility, and it still has to change. Have you noticed that? I mean, how do you do that when you have to train at a specific, because you work for a company, obviously?
It's a small fitness center. It's actually located within a country club, and so it's a community fitness center. I see the same people day in and day out, and my big thing in terms of exercise and just how I program for a client is I always look at, first and foremost, do they have the ability to competently perform fundamental movement patterns, squatting, lunging, reaching, bending, twisting, and really start from there. And just like how I do with my approach to diet, I take a low and slow, real just kind of a methodical approach of building up that base. I want somebody to be squatting well with no weight before I have them squatting with weight. I want somebody to be squatting competently with weight before I have them accelerating their body weight beyond levels of force that even a barbell would produce, such as in plyometrics. Give the body time to adapt, give the connective tissues time to adapt, not just the muscle tissue, but the connective tissue. If somebody hasn't had an athletic background, they haven't been moving their whole lives. Cartilage and tendons and ligaments and all that is going to be weak as well. So I just think that, we're too quick to rush into things, maybe see something like P90X or Insanity on TV, and you take people from the couch to insanity, and you're going to get injured. You're going to get hurt. And unfortunately, people are too caught up in the before and after pictures, which are a highly biased selection. If somebody's marketing a before and after picture, they're picking out pictures from the people that it worked. Right. You don't see the hundreds and thousands of people where they don't have a before and after picture, because after they took their picture, they blew out their knee, and now they're in even worse shape.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. When you think about paleo, it's really an anti-inflammatory diet. So, and that's why CrossFit has picked up our diet, is because you can do these extreme sort of workouts and keep the inflammation low. And I'm sure you probably see the excitement on some of your clients' faces when they start doing maybe a 50-50 paleo, and they're probably losing some weight, and then they go 60-40. You see that sort of progression. It's like people starting to see the change, and then they kind of go further and further into being stricter paleo. Can you explain some of the I guess, results you've seen in some of your clients?
It's interesting the way that people sort of take things on, and I've noticed that some people are able to go from kind of standard diet to 100% paleo. It's just when they decide to do it, and when they do it, they're in it and they're on it. Other people will dabble for an extended period of time. Unfortunately, like we were talking about before, if you dabble, you're not going to get the full results. And so it's hard for me as a trainer to hear somebody say, well, I've got this nagging 5 pounds, or I've got this 10 pounds that I just can't lose. But then we talk every week about what they did during their weekend. And clearly, based off of that, there's no way you're going to lose that last 5 to 10 pounds, which require the most dedication, the most consistency, and the most discipline to achieve. So it really just varies from individual to individual. I think there's a huge emotional and mental component to behavior change that there's tons of psychology behind it. That individual's background, how they perceive food, are they a comfort eater? Are they a stress eater? Are they the type of person who they would feel rude if they didn't eat X, Y, and Z in a social situation? Does their family sabotage their efforts, either consciously or unconsciously? If they're a people pleaser, they might be a food pleaser as well. Well, my so-and-so, my husband wants to eat this, or my wife wants to eat this, and so I can't make it something different. There's just so many different situations that arise that it just varies all across the board. The people that say, hey, this is paleo, this is what I'm going to do, other people can accommodate me if they have a problem with it, they get the best results, hands down. So it always comes down to that. If you're able to do something fully and without compromise to yourself, then absolutely you're going to get the best results for it. But that's a long path that somebody has to go on to have that kind of confidence. not just in making a food choice and saying this is the right thing for me to eat because there's so much confusion and misinformation out there, but this is a choice that I'm going to make when my mom comes to town, and this is a choice that I'm going to make when we go out to eat, and this is a choice that I'm going to make at Thanksgiving or Halloween or whatever the case may be. It's crazy, man. You know, when I signed on as a personal trainer, I didn't realize that I was signing on as a psychologist and counselor and all these things at the same time. But it is part of the job, and it becomes apparent really quickly that that's a huge part of what you end up contending with.
Well, it's a big part of the job, and I think a lot of personal trainers are ill-equipped to deal with the psychological end. For me, it was a little easier because of my background in, you know, criminal justice and having to interview a lot of people, and I just had the one-on-one experience, so I could tell every criminal had never done anything wrong. So it kind of
yeah. Hey, that sounds like it could relate.
Every client you get, don't they say, they go, oh, you know, I don't eat that way. You know, I know
I don't eat that bad.
Kids eat really bad, but not me. I eat healthy, and you go, okay, here we go. Tell me what you eat, and they always bib to you. And I tell them, when you lie to me about what you're eating, you're really hurting yourself because I can't analyze what you're doing. I can't tell you how to change anything. I think it is a progression because I think we all went through it, you know, to where I used to have my cheat weekends, you know, and I think that's part of our culture is because the workload in America for the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday is so stressful for most of us that we just go out and blow it out on the weekends. You know, it's get it all out. You eat whatever you want. You drink a lot of alcohol, have a good time. And then Monday, it's refocused. And that's why the gyms are always packed on Monday. No one's there on Friday. You know
that's the pattern, man. All the time. You get the Monday guilt workouts, and by Friday, everyone's like, yeah, I'm done. It's time to get wasted again.
It doesn't really work. And I got away with it. But, you know, me and Heath have talked about this too, man. I exercised a lot. I was 2 hours in the gym every day. Yeah. So I'd save up, try and do it during the weekend. And then after a while, I only had one cheat day. You know, I only got one during the week. Then it turned into a cheat meal once a week. And then after that, I finally just decided I don't even need cheat meals anymore. It's just however I feel and when I want to do it. So now what I do is I set certain parts of the year where I get carte blanche. And this is what's worked best for me.
Interesting. This is new. I've never heard the seasonal, the cheat season.
Oh, it's I do everything a little bit differently. But even that conference, that workshop, people were seeing me and they're all, oh my God, he's eating beers, and that's definitely not paleo. You know, and he's eating everything we're eating. I told him 1 meal a day I would eat bread, and I went, I'm fine. 3 days, I'm good. It won't hurt me. You know, but you know,
He came back complaining about how crappy he felt.
It always does. It takes 5 to 7 days to get back on track.
Well, you know, keep in mind, Gary, you're at your like ideal weight. So when you eat, it's different because you're gonna be able to bounce back in to where you were because that's not the way you're eating all the time. I mean, you have to explain it properly because a lot of people, you know, are trying to like, hey, I'll reach my ideal weight, and then they'll cheat way more than they should, and they never reach their goal. So it needs to, you know, you got to kind of preface.
Well, and that's what had to happen. I spoke the last day of the workshop. So they got to see me basically do all these bad things, and then I had to explain, hey, you know, once or twice a year, I know I'm going to have to go to a workshop or someplace, a conference where I know that I'm not going to have access to the food I usually have because it's not necessarily a paleo workshop or something like that. I go, this is a couple times a year. And then I pick days. So I pick Thanksgiving, Christmas, and 4th of July are my blowout days. And, I mean, I go to town. I mean, it's one day, but I look at what I used to eat compared to now. And even the way I eat now, as opposed to the average American, is far healthier on my blowout days than them because it wrecks me. I mean, I get full, I'm sick, and I go, okay, and after I'm done, I know you guys experience this, I'm done.
Never going to do that again.
Yeah, after that one day, you're like, I'm not eating like that for a long time. You're sick for a couple days, your stomach's digestion's all messed up.
It's not worth it. I don't even, my cheat day is like, I'll have some cheese. That's it. And if I have like weed of any kind, it's like I'm passed out. Like my whole body shuts down. I'm actually like paleo, not only by choice, but because I have to be. It's a little different. So, I mean, it kind of forces me into this way. But Tony, one thing I wanted to ask you was, in your older clients or, you know, Gary and I often talk about how to build strength, and obviously losing weight and helps with balancing your hormones out because you have less fat, you have less estrogen, and sure probably helps to boost testosterone to an extent. But have you done any research in terms of what tribes did to boost testosterone naturally, or do you recommend anything to your clients that are looking to build strength, like creatine or
I think creatine's great for sure. Protein supplements, even though they, how paleo they aren't, is debatable, but I've seen ample scientific evidence in support of whey protein and creatine, pretty much wholly good and nothing contrary to that. So if somebody's looking to build muscle mass and strength specifically, I think whey protein for sure. If somebody's younger, I think creatine makes sense because it helps with those first couple of contractions, and someone who's an explosive athlete, someone who's a strength athlete can help. It increases volumization of the muscles, and so they can get a little bit more leverage and a little bit more strength that way as well. And I've used both extensively throughout my own life, and they absolutely work. And I think if we're looking at supplements, those are two that are worth what you're paying for. 99% of everything else out there, I'm sure Gary can attest to this, maybe it's not what it is, maybe it's not what it's labeled to be, and it's dubious whether or not it actually has some sort of actual active role in the body.
But to be clear, though, whey is not paleo at all because it's dairy based.
Yeah, it's dairy. Yeah, I think we were talking a little bit before the bell. So an egg white protein, a beef protein, which you're talking about is something that your company offers now, which I think is super cool. I actually saw there's a competitor's beef protein, carnivore, and people have asked me about that, but it's got all sorts of artificial sweeteners and this and that in there.
Sucralose. I mean, it's crazy, some of the stuff. Like almost every protein, like Quest just released their new protein line, and that's great for them, but then you look at the ingredients and they all have sucralose, and which changes your gut microbiome. Yeah. You end up gaining.
No bueno.
Yeah, it's like it's just, why add sucralose? There's no need for it. It's crazy.
Well, that's the problem for people trying to get on track, and I've talked about this extensively, is you're fighting multiple battles. You're fighting the healthcare system, which is broken, and they're telling you to do one thing that is completely wrong. You're fighting the supplement industry, which is not too far off from the drug industry, and I know because I used to investigate both of them. And you have to be incredibly careful with supplements because it's the Wild West out there.
Yeah.
Then you're fighting, the exercise side, which is based on templates that are broken, are not necessarily applicable to most people today because most people have no exercise background. So you have all these battles going on, and it's really hard and confusing for the general consumer to get on track because they're basically getting screwed from all angles.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you get it. They've become very defeated, and they're pessimistic. They're all, you know what? I don't even care anymore. I'm giving up. I'm going to die of cancer, whatever. I'm going to smoke, eat whatever I want. And that's the tricky battle. And I think that's where the paleo movement and people like us come in and say, okay, enough. We can fix this. It's not that complicated. It's not that hard. And that's the goal. Unfortunately, I know we've talked about this too, and you can give your 2 cents on it, Tony, as any big movement starts to take off, like paleo now it's getting off into some strange places. They're starting to bring in foods and stuff that are not necessarily paleo at all. They're bringing in more potatoes and starchy carbs and saying dairy's okay now. And I've heard stuff on legumes and let's bring beans in and eating them 3 times a week. And I'm all, whoa, where are we going? Because now we're doing the same thing that the supplement industry has done. Now we're confusing everyone.
Yeah, I think the basic paleo template. If I am talking to somebody about paleo, I tell them it's meat, vegetables, fruit, nuts and seeds, healthy oils like avocado, olive oil, and I recommend people do that. And to me, I'm going to say that's paleo, and that's what we should start with. And for me personally, that's what I stick with because it seems to work the best. Like you said, you're going to see that in any industry as things mature, as the industry develops. You can see that in the low carb as it kind of has come and gone through various points in history. You had the Atkins diet, which is actually kind of paleo-ish, and then the Atkins company comes out and they start producing a million different kind of low carb products, and maybe it's a bunch of sugar alcohol, or maybe it's it's low carb or Atkins approved by the letter, but not the intent of what the diet is. And I think really, speaking to what you said about there being a lot of confusion, that's 100% true. There's so many promises out there. There's so many different, either personalities vouching for one thing or another. And I think that's the beautiful thing about paleo is that nobody owns it, and it's a mindset. It's a template that anybody can apply. If you're in California or you're Florida or you're Africa or Europe or wherever you're living, what actual whole natural foods exist in your area? What are the things that your ancestors ate? What are the things that a human being would have been able to reasonably consume and prepare 10, 20, 30,000 years ago? And it always comes down to animals and plants, having a variety of forms, animals having a variety of forms. Go to town on that. I think it can be really simple, and I think that the simple solution is the one that makes the most sense to me, and it helps me kind of stay grounded.
Don't you think it's kind of disrespectful when you see people like Chris Kresser going Dr. Oz, and there's a big plate of beans on there on national TV? The guy has the ball just about to run into end zone and completely fumbles it on national TV. Don't you find something like that really confusing for a lot of people? Not to mention you got a guy that Chris Kresser is kind of everywhere. He's got his monikers Don't follow the paleo diet, which is, first off, completely disrespectful. Follow your own paleo code. I just find that completely wrong in so many levels because Dr. Cordain, who's the founder of paleo, did all the research. There was no place for legumes anywhere in the cultures that were out there. Do you find that kind of odd that that's occurring?
I mean, I certainly think that there's foods that are healthful that aren't paleo, and maybe certain types of legumes prepared in a particular way might fall into that. For instance, if somebody their genetic background is such that their ancestors consumed dairy for an extensive period of time, they might be able to tolerate it fairly well, and it might actually be a healthier food for that person than somebody else whose ancestors didn't. But I think that paleo in general, I'm going to use the original sort of intent, and I'm going to use the original paleo diet as it was stated when I talk about paleo. If you look at my cookbook, it's maybe salt is probably the biggest departure from Lauren Cordain's version of paleo. I think
that's
what?
Yeah.
I'm going to season my food.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm not eating McDonald's. I'm gonna put some salt on my steak. Sorry.
Well, and with that, and we talked about that, and I actually talked to Dr. Cordain about that as well, because me and Heath were both puzzled by that, and I kind of gave the instance of we would actually drink the blood of animals when we would kill them. We would share. Usually, it's been proven, and actually, cultures that are still removed and still hunt wild game, they drink the blood of the animal. Well, guess what? That has a lot in. Has a lot of sodium. It has a lot of minerals that the animals get from eating off the earth. So it's an interesting concept, and we don't do that anymore.
Well, there's sodium in eggs. I mean, naturally occurring. We sell egg white powder. One scoop has 300 milligrams of sodium.
Oh, wow.
And that's why, because birds peck off the ground usually will eat, and they eat rocks to help digestion at certain points. And obviously that's going to have the minerals like sodium in there and other minerals, and that's why. I always take a look. I'm a simpleton. I just go, what are they doing and what are they eating?
Yeah.
And how would that transfer into my body, and how would I get, process that? And that's where the sea salt one, and then, sea salt's been used as a preservative for a long, long time.
Yep.
That's where the salt of the earth and salt was traded equally for gold. It was so valuable at one point.
Right.
So I mean,
animals will go out and seek out salt licks, and I think that to a certain extent, salt is necessary. And if you're not eating the processed foods, if you're not eating all the frozen foods that have salt just as a matter of course, they just throw it in there just to help it keep. You're removing so much salt from your diet by eliminating processed foods that, for me personally, I'm going to season my food. I do it reasonably. I don't oversalt my foods just because my tongue is more sensitive now.
Right.
But that's probably my biggest
that's kind of what
difference.
Dr. Cordain says. He's like, look, we're so over saturated with sodium that you shouldn't be taking it for a health reason. Whereas something like legumes is based on the research and the foundation of what paleo is all about. Don't consume legumes. That's where Gary and I have talked at length about people trying to add stuff in there that completely. I don't know. Recently I actually literally had beans, and I hadn't had them in 4 years. Had them the other day, and I thought I was going to die. Like my stomach was like
beans. The more you
do,
the more you eat.
The more you go to.
There's so many other things we can have. Why? I don't understand why these people are trying to add stuff into our diet that shouldn't be there. And
the thing with beans, and me and you agree, Heath, is here's the thing with beans. It takes a lot of work to make it edible for a human. It really does. And if you eat it in its raw form before you throw on a bunch of barbecue sauce or honey or maple syrup or whatever, it tastes like crap. Yeah. I mean, it really doesn't taste well. It's nothing but a pure starch. There's not a whole lot of nutrients in it. Why waste your time? I think that's where I get confused them all. Why would you even mess around with that area? It really is a non-starter if you're trying to be healthy, and there's really not the benefit compared to the detriment aren't equal. I mean, they're really not.
I've been actually kind of trotting out this presentation lately where it's more or less like a Paleo 101 thing. I put it together for some Paleo Magazine stuff, and I've been giving it to some local CrossFit gyms and Whole Foods locations. And one of the things I have in there is common criticisms of the paleo diet. And of course, well, why are grains excluded? There are traditional cultures that consume grains, and they seem to be doing just fine. Obviously, paleo is missing out on something. And you hear that when experts weigh in on the paleo diet. They're like, oh, they're cutting out these nutritious grains. I mean,
every time they're always doing that.
I always bring that up.
I
think you can make grains edible, and I think it's clear to see that human societies have been agrarian and grain based and have been able to thrive. But like you're saying, Gary, it's a huge amount of work. I personally am too lazy to soak, sprout, ferment. I don't know, all the convoluted steps to make grains edible. I'm just going to eat a piece of meat and, have an apple and some almonds and call it a day. But I think it's just a matter of ease. If somebody wants to do all that stuff, there's plenty of resources out there. And I think that's where Weston A. Price, for example, is a really good resource. If you're really dedicated to eating grains and beans, go onto Weston A. Price Foundation website, look up what it takes to make those things actually less bad and perhaps nutritious even. And spend your day sprouting things. I mean, that's
proof in the pudding for that. I don't know if anyone. I've been to Weston A. Price conferences, and I'll tell you what, it's not working. What they're preaching, I'll tell you that right now. I've said this, and I'll defend this to my dying day. I've been to many health conferences as a collective. That was the unhealthiest group of people I have ever seen at a health conference. So
I've never been to a Weston A. Price conference. I wonder, it's interesting though, and this is kind of a little bit of a tangent. You kind of wonder how much of a selection bias is at play. Are people that are going to a Weston A. Price conference, are they sick and they're seeking a solution? Is that why they're sick, or is it because they're doing something and then that's making them sick? Because I was even thinking about that. I was at Paleo FX last year.
It goes all across the board.
Right. It's kind of hard to, is it corollary? Is it causative? I've never been to a Weston A. Price convention, but if you go to a paleo event, it's like, super ripped CrossFitter dude and severely overweight, diabetic person, often sitting side by side. And I don't know, it's just interesting to see how, when people are drawn into a health movement, where are they coming from? Is it a performance thing? Is it a health thing? Is it an appearance thing? And
I think you should look at the leaders. You should look at the leaders of who's leading the movement. And if the leaders can't get it right and they're not practicing what they preach, then you got a severe problem. I mean, I think Gary is talking specifically not only about who was attending, but the leaders. And obviously, I was told by numerous people about Paleo FX and a lot of concern there also. But there are a lot of ripped paleo people, and I'm just tired of the vegans bagging on us. So it's about time the
vegans.
I have personal experience with the Weston A. Price form of diet, which is very different than actually Weston A. Price professes. Anyone who's read his book and what they teach at the Weston A. Price Foundation are not the same. And I've had this argument, and I know the leadership over there doesn't like me a whole lot, and I don't care because I don't like them either, because they've taken something, again, that was meant to go in a certain way to help people. Well, I experimented. I went when I first started changing my health. I bought Weston A. Price's book, and then I went to the Weston A. Price Foundation because that was, obviously they're tied together. And I followed the diet. I started soaking grains, I started soaking beans, and I started sprouting and fermenting. And what happened was my health got derailed. So it ended up really screwing me up for about a year because I stuck with it.
So you did worse doing that? Were you eating a lot of, I guess you could just say mass-produced kind of industrial foods?
No.
So you were eating a pretty clean diet without grains and beans, and then you started adding them in a soaked, sprouted, fermented form?
Yes, and also dairy. I was doing raw, whole-fat dairy, and I have an extreme intolerance to dairy, which I had to find out by going in this diet. Helped me. But I had to take each piece out to see what was affecting me. Well, guess what it was? Beans, grains, and dairy. And so I pulled it out, and I ended up going back into a paleo side, and I actually cleaned up my diet. Then it went back into I was kind of primal before, and then I kind of converted to the Weston A. Price model, screwed me all up. I mean, really, really bad. I mean, to the point where I thought, what is wrong with me? Why do I not feel good? Multiple sinus infections, chest, swelling of the joint.
You can't soak out gluten, Gary.
That's the thing.
At the bottom line, anybody that talks about grains, you're like, but it has gluten, and then they're like, oh yeah,
And it was so much work. Oh.
Yeah, you can't soak out the gluten.
It was so much work to do.
That sounds like a good T-shirt slogan.
Right?
Yeah. But don't get me wrong. And I tell people, was I getting heirloom grains? No, I was just getting organic grains and organically, pesticide, herbicide free. But I wasn't in the heirloom area, so that's a whole other issue. I mean, to get true heirloom grains and legumes, you got to go way back and find a strain from over 100 years ago.
Yeah, the only one is kamut, and that's probably the cleanest one. It's an ancient Egyptian grain. It's 40% higher in protein than wheat is. I actually did okay on that one, but all other strains. But there's really no point in it. It's such a high carb load. You would spike way too much. What's the point? And then you're gonna crash afterwards. So I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. Actually, are you kind of surprised, Tony, with a lot of the paleo products on the market with the sheer abundance of sugar in them? Because obviously sugar is not
in the form of maybe like honey or dates or things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Because you pick up a regular bar or something like that, you're talking at least 17 grams of sugar, even though it's from a natural
or dried fruit, I guess.
Yeah, and you eat that, you're gonna sugar bomb later. Or the oversaturation of almost every single recipe book, except probably for yours because there's no sugar in it. But you're talking so much honey, so much maple syrup, and then people are picking up these books looking to change their lives, and they're like, "Oh my God, I'm gaining weight." I've heard that from so many people. It's kind of sad. What's your kind of take on that?
Well, Paleo Magazine, if you go on their website, they have a Paleo 101 section, and there's a Paleo pyramid there. And if you look at it, at the base, vegetables, so produce, and that's I would say more of a volume.
Sure.
It's relative to volume more than calorie content, because obviously animal products are going to make up more of the calories just because more fat. So it's produce, it's animal products, it's healthy fat, and then towards the top are fruit and nuts and seeds. And so I think that if we're really trying to be results-minded about our paleo diet, we need to have mostly vegetables on our plate. The next biggest portion is going to be meats, and then from there, you're adding some fat. Maybe the meat has enough fat, or it's being cooked with fat, and then the things that need to be consumed with the most moderation are nuts and fruit. Unfortunately, nuts and fruit are the highest reward of the kind of paleo approved foods, and so you get fat, you get some sugar, and pretty soon you're pushing the same buttons that you would push if you're eating something that wasn't paleo. Let's just say, Snickers bar. So we just need to be mindful, I think, as consumers of what we're buying. Are we buying something? For instance, I looked at a package of chili powder the other day that said gluten-free on the label. I'm interested. Flip it over. This new gluten-free chili powder that's more expensive for less product, lo and behold, has cornstarch in it. So modified cornstarch is added in. I looked at the standard chili powder, flipped it over. There's no grains. There's no gluten in it. So it's just one of those things where people in general, you can't look at the front. You got to always flip over. You got to be discerning. You still have to be a conscious consumer. that's a human responsibility that we have, is to pay attention to what we're doing. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And if you think you can eat a bunch of paleo treats all the time and get great results, you're not, unfortunately. Life doesn't work that way. A lot of sugar and a lot of fat combined is what got us into this trouble in the first place.
How about calories, though? Because there's still so many people are going paleo and like, what, I don't count calories. All of a sudden they're taking in way too many calories, and your metabolism's only burning a certain amount. What's your take on consuming more calories than your
right?
Isn't it going to get stored as fat?
So I always say you don't necessarily have to count calories, but calories do count. So if you eat a lot of high volume foods, if you're eating a lot of produce, so for example, if somebody sits down and has a kale salad with 2 cups of kale, vegetables, lots of water content, lots of volume, you're topping that off with a piece of meat. Maybe you throw some roasted almonds or something on there as well, have an apple for dessert. It's a lot of volume. It's a lot of food. It's a lot of chewing. Your jaw's going to be tired. You're going to be full. But it's not very calorically dense. And so I think that we still have to be mindful of calorie content. But if you're eating a solid paleo diet, calories kind of take care of themselves. So that's the thing. If you're eating the abundant produce and the good quality meats, things that actually require some mechanical work on the part of your body, whether it's chewing or digesting, things that take up a lot of volume, you don't have to be so worried about counting calories. But you are, in a sense, restricting your calories. You are
in calories,
practical level doing that.
Calories become tricky in the sense, because don't get me wrong, I preach you don't have to count calories to a point. I go, unless you're a beginner. Then it changes. I go, unless you've got this stuff wired, you need to figure out what your calorie intake is and what you're expending. And it's not an exact science. There's huge variations on your metabolism, depending what you're eating, exercise, what type of exercise. So I tell people it's a baseline. It's very general. You could be off 500 calories just by error. I mean, it's real easy to be off. But for beginners, I always tell them, hey, you have to watch the calories. You have to pay attention. But I never preach the 2,000 or 2,500. Amal, that's a little hard and that's arbitrary. I mean, that's all over.
Now you can actually find out how many calories a day your body burns. So many fitness trackers.
Yeah, you go on there and check it out and kind of get a baseline, but don't go by just the standard.
When I was first losing weight, I used a body bug, and I was able to actually...
Yeah, I actually know exactly what that is. We used to sell those.
Yeah, and it worked. I was able to determine how many calories a day my body was burning, and then I developed my diet around it, and then that's about right when I found out about paleo, so it made it a lot easier to lose the weight, because I lost about 35 pounds. So, but, we want to cover a couple more things with you, Tony, here. We want to talk to you about kind of what you see going on in paleo. I mean, obviously there's a lot of exciting stuff happening with Paleo Magazine. I'm actually really excited to see Paleo Magazine take more of a fitness focus, which is great. They're actually showing very strong men and women in there, and highlighting a lot of people that are really in shape, which is awesome. I think I'm also excited because when I walk into Whole Foods now, it's right there on the grocery store stand, and it's great. I mean, Julian Bakery's been a proud supporter of Paleo Magazine for a long time, so I always go in there. I always turn around the back cover, and then I put it right next to each other and take a picture of it and promote it all over the place. But what are some of the exciting things you see happening with in the paleo movement and also Paleo Magazine?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that it's getting some mainstream coverage. We were talking a little bit before the show, before we started recording today, and there's just that CBS news segment where your company's products were featured, where Paleo Magazine was featured, where Michelle Tam from Nom Nom Paleo was on there with her husband, and people are doing CrossFit, and it's showing paleo in a light that's actually relatively realistic, and in a light that is it actually is the way that people do paleo. I think some of the early coverage was like a dude with no shirt walking barefoot with a bloody piece of raw meat, and it's like nobody's doing that. And not to throw that dude under the bus, but that's not everyday paleo. That's not the average paleo dieter, paleo enthusiast lifestyle. So I think the media coverage is starting to evolve, and as this lifestyle gains some credibility and it gets realistic coverage, it's going to bring more people into the fold, because what's there not to like about eating really good quality food that actually tastes good, that leaves you feeling satisfied where you have a meal and you have energy afterwards. You don't feel like you're going to pass out and need to take a nap, where you're able to easily and effortlessly maintain your body weight, to become lean if you desire to be lean or to improve your performance, or just be healthy and avoid disease and the huge costs emotionally, physically, financially that entails. So there's so much positive about paleo. It's the only thing that I really feel, I'm the kind of person, I can't promote something if I don't believe in it wholeheartedly. And I feel like there's just so much truth. I don't think there's the truth with a capital T, but there's a lot of truth to paleo. There's a lot of truth in this movement that we're just looking at, well, what did human beings do? What worked? Yep. What are the types of things that just make sense for us as an animal on this earth? And that's true. We're creatures of this earth where we have to be eating things that come of this earth as well. And if we're not doing that, if we're thinking that we can fool nature, if we're thinking that we can fool our bodies and we can eat artificial sugar, and if we can eat or drink Diet Coke and do all these crazy things and just burn it all off by staying up and doing P90X, it's craziness. So people are driving themselves crazy. I think paleo is a sane solution. It's a logical solution. It's a scientific solution. So much of the fitness industry is about short-term results. Get that before and after picture. Get people hooked. Sell them on some sort of bogus promise. I'm going to tell people, hey, if you're listening to this, you've never tried paleo. Maybe this is the first time you've ever even encountered it. First of all, I guarantee you're actually going to feel better. You're probably going to lose weight if you need to lose weight. If you need to gain weight, you're probably going to gain weight. You're not going to have food cravings nearly the same as you had before.
Right.
You can guarantee certain results with paleo, and I think that's the most exciting thing about it, is that it's just such a solid product. If you look at the whole body of knowledge, the mindset itself, it's good for people. It's a wholly good thing. If anybody does it, they're gonna be better off for it, and we need help.
All we're trying to do is get people to eat clean, really, and and the end result is you're healthy.
Yeah, and then there's all the lifestyle stuff too. So it's sleep, it's stress, it's you can take all these other elements and create a really, really great environment for your natural human body to be thriving in. Our modern world doesn't give a hoot about our health. We can take initiative. We can take responsibility. The paleo movement provides the tools that people need to be healthy in this world in a realistic way that you can actually do and that you can live with. And I think it's something that it's only going to get bigger and bigger. I think people doubt paleo hitting the mainstream, but it's going to be a significant force, if not already, in our culture.
One, it has to be. I mean, our health epidemic is. I mean, we're so off course with our health, and
right.
The problem that paleo probably has is some of the bad PR, as far as, like you said, guy holding a bloody piece of meat running around.
That poor guy is probably, oh man.
Or it's so simple though that it doesn't fit the consumerism model either. Because paleo is not about buying useless more stuff that you don't need. We break it down to the basic animal instincts of survival and health, and there's not a big industry for that. You know what I mean? People can't get rich off selling you natural food that you get from a farmer or raise yourself. And that's the biggest battle we're going to fight, that it's not a movement to make billionaires. It's a movement to make people healthy. And actually take large chunks of money from billionaires who are full of it. You look at the medical industry, and they're going to fight us tooth and nail. Because there's a lot of money in our health system. So that's a battle we have to do, and it's just.
I do have to say, I've had recently, and I think that this is another sign of good things to come. Recently, I've had more and more people say that their doctor recommended that they look into the paleo diet. And that's huge, that more and more medical professionals are actually getting on board, and potentially because they have to do it themselves to stay healthy.
Well, now they're calling themselves wellness clinics and health practitioners. And I've noticed, actually, I just met a guy at this workshop who's an MD, and he strictly does nothing but pretty much paleo, and that's what he teaches in Primal. And he lives a lifestyle himself. I mean, he has his own garden, he raises his own cattle. It's a pretty amazing thing, and they've even gotten away from mentioning their MDs, which I find pretty intriguing.
Oh, wow. Yeah, think about how much work and money goes into that to let it go. It's big.
Yeah, because now it's becoming a stigma that if you go to an MD, you may be just wasting your time. Because they're just going to prescribe you a drug and then kick you out the door so that you come back and they can prescribe you some more. So it's a weird twist, and I mean it's starting to come, and there's interconnections that paleo hasn't even gotten into, like permaculture and self-sufficiency models, and all these are starting to tie together.
Yep.
And that's where I was at. I was at a permaculture workshop, and I was the only guy with a paleo background there, but there was people who had done paleo, and it was the same for Permaculture Voices, which is the biggest permaculture conference in the country, and I was the only primal paleo guy out of I don't know how many people were there. So there's still some work we need to do as far as combining forces and figuring out what works, but we're on our way. I mean, the medical community is definitely catching on. People are starting to get it, even though with that CBS piece, I don't know if you guys caught it, but there was kind of undertone of
the doctor talking about grains, of course.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's been,
you always got to find the guy.
Exactly. That's been so disproven. And then, of course, he trotted out the thing like, well, we know that ancient people ate all sorts of different things, and strawberries weren't available in the paleo diet. It's like, good job, dude. You 100% missed the point.
Yeah, exactly. But there were berries. We know that. Matter of fact, I've got natural huckleberries and raspberries on my property in Washington. Now, I walk all around and seeing some of the natural foods and foliage out there. I mean, I'm all, okay, I know what exists. What do I have on there? I have lots of animals of all sorts roaming through. I have natural berries. I have nuts, some natural nuts in the form of like pine nuts and some others. But, I mean, you're like, if you go out and you look, it's there. It's common sense. Put yourself, and that's what I've always taught, is remove yourself from modern society for a little bit, plant yourself into a natural environment, and look around you. That is what your body would have to eat to consume to be healthy. Well, did you have predators hunt you down and high infant mortality rates and falling off a cliff and breaking your leg and dying? Yeah, that's totally different. We live a very sheltered life now. So comparing those two, and I think that's something we've got to do a better job of, is explaining prehistoric man and modern man. There's a big dichotomy as far as how we live, but our nutritional needs haven't changed. I mean, they're the same. I mean, going and eating gummy bears all day, I mean, where would you get a gummy bear in nature? I mean, it didn't exist.
Or how often was it you got a gorge on honey or maple syrup? It wasn't a daily occurrence, but
you'd have to be willing to get stung a lot.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You make that choice.
Tony, tell us a little bit about what you have going on. We'd love to, obviously support you and tell us if you have any upcoming events or we know your book's out on Amazon, kind of all over the place. I saw you promoting that. What else do you have going on?
Yeah, man, the book has been a cool thing. It's doing well. I wanted it, if somebody opens it up and if they've never done paleo, they don't know anything about paleo, it's a good grilling book. End of story. So if somebody's interested in grilling, you can hand them this, and it's going to get them firing up the grill, cooking up some steaks, maybe cooking up some organ meats and some other things that I haven't thought of. I talked to somebody the other day who was like, man, I tried this. There's a cedar plank halibut recipe in there. He's like, that's the best fish I've ever tasted. We were kind of talking about some ways to get cedar planks more cheaply. And so he's out to Home Depot to have them cut down a 2x4. So it's just fun interacting with people who've picked up the book, tried some recipes, people who have there's no paleo diet awareness whatsoever. In these conversations, it's purely good quality food, things that taste good, things that are going to help you feed your family and your friends and have a good time. So that's been a really cool experience since, it's my first kind of, big published thing outside of Paleo Magazine stuff and projects I've worked with for them. So hopefully it does well enough for me to secure a second book, and we'll see what that might be. But in the meantime, keeping busy with the podcast, still having all sorts of cool guests on there. It's super fun just getting to talk to people. I just had a little 13-year-old girl on who's doing paleo and like totally killing it. And then the next day it's talking to Mark Sisson and having the opportunity for me to learn about stuff directly from people like that. So I'm just trying to learn. I'm just trying to do the best that I can to express what I see as being the truth and try to put good information out there and keep myself healthy, keep my clients healthy, and try to be a positive force in this world, which needs as much positivity as it can.
I agree. Go ahead and give everybody your website so they can check out all your stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's probably good, too. So if somebody goes to livecaveman.com, livecaveman.com. That'll pull them up to my website.
Cool.
And there's links on there for everything. If you go to the book tab, you can find Amazon links to Paleo Grilling and recipes and whatever else I throw up on there. I'm not super on top of the blog. I have it. I've got a lot of old content from when I was able to devote more time to it. But I have so much stuff going on with training clients and Paleo Magazine and the podcast that if I can get something up once a week, then I'm happy. So
that's cool. We'll put all the Amazon links and everything in the description, so anybody looking to link over to Tony's stuff,
sweet
there. Anybody that has any questions for Gary and I, email Gary at gary@theprimalshow.com and myself, Heath@theprimalshow.com. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, and you'll stay up to date on all our latest videos. And we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks so much, Tony, for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.